All right, welcome back to another installment of Rod and Rusty Radio. I'm Rod,
Rusty here.
and today we got a special guest. A good friend of ours, Micah, is here. He's a dating coach, and we're going to learn all
Hey guys.
about what that is. Micah, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thanks for coming
Hey,
aboard.
thanks for having me.
And
Happy
great,
to be
man.
here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. You are officially our first guest of the show, but from what we know, you have a really interesting background as a dating coach, and we'd love to know what you do and how you got into it, and if you we'll let you take it from there if you'd like.
Well, if you need to pop your guest virginity, coming to a dating coach is probably a good idea.
Very nice.
So.
I'd imagine a lot of virgins listen to podcasts.
Yeah, tons of them. The Nerdist especially, I'm sure. I'm a big fan.
So you're a dating coach now. What exactly is that, and is that anything like being a pickup artist? What you tell me?
Yeah, so the distinction is subtle but really important. When you talk about pickup artists, you're talking about a very niche section of the dating advice world, and they might seem like there's a lot of them out there, but it's really, when you look at the whole, all the people that are making money off of giving dating advice, pickup artists or PUA or PUA, those are a much smaller group, but they're kind of the weaponized version of men's dating advice. There's a lot that's useful that can be used as a great catalyst for personal growth. I myself have benefited from that, but there's also a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of negativity and a lot of bad practices and ways of thinking that go hand in hand with the PUA, the pickup artist mentality. So I did get into that. That's where I started. I, like most of my brethren that jumped into this field, a lot of us started out by reading Neil Strauss's The Game.
Yes,
and
familiar.
I'm sure you guys are familiar with that.
Of course.
At least familiar with the title, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great book, but it's a good read, but I actually no longer recommend it to people who are interested in getting better with women.
Okay.
Because the book kind of gives you the impression, similar to like Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. A lot of people read that and they were like, "Oh my God, I can be an entrepreneur. I can quit my job." And but it doesn't really, when you read the Game, people go, "Oh my God, I could sleep with any girl that I want. I can steal girls from their boyfriends or whatever."
Right.
No, that is not real life. So and the Game was actually written, depending on who you ask, as a cautionary tale. It was supposed to say, hey, look what happened to all these guys. Look at all this negative behavior. Yeah, we all got laid along the way, but in the end, the moral of the story
So that was
is...
the resolution of the book? The
resolution of the book is basically saying, I went through this whole process of learning how to pick up women when really what I needed to be doing was accepting myself and just being confident in myself. So although when you do read the book, that message is like the last chapter.
Right. Yeah, so you'd have to get from front to back cover there.
It seems like it's more of an art of
But
tricking women.
A lot
into
of people are
hooking up
probably
with
picking and choosing different chapters along the way, I would think, anyway, with a book like that.
Well, it's not a manual. It's a story. It's just a story of all these guys. And what happened is I listened to that book. I was packing for Vegas, my second trip to Vegas, and I had the audiobook on, and I was just enthralled. I ended up burning through that whole book that night, and then I went and downloaded Mystery Method, and that's the book that actually tells you, gives you techniques, things to do certain things. And then when I landed in Vegas, I immediately started practicing it, and I immediately got results.
So what were you practicing?
Results were,
Sorry.
I was practicing how to cold open people.
And what were some of the techniques? I'll let you get into it. Sorry. Yeah, I have a lot of questions
the
here.
Techniques are, this is the truth. So cold opening is an important skill. I think everybody should learn how to do that. Everyone should learn, and that's what I still teach. I still teach people how to approach women. Men's biggest hang-up is approach anxiety. And that's when you have
100%.
fear of going up and talking to a woman that you're attracted to.
Of course.
Right? And I could expound for hours on why I think that fear exists now more than it did, say, 30 years ago. If you talk, who the best people to talk to about dating advice are? Old people.
And why is that?
Talk to people because back then the way that you dated people was the way you should date people. You saw somebody you liked, you approached them, you said hi, you asked them out. It's really that simple, guys.
It is.
It's just really, in this day and age, with our generation of men, the post-feminist sort of generation, there's been a lot of cultural change between, say, the 50s, 60s, 70s, and then the, 80s, 90s, 2000s. There's been a lot of shift there, right? So I think there's a lot of legitimate reasons for men to be afraid to talk to women in public or to go up to people in different situations. And these are the things that they need to deprogram themselves from.
Right.
So that actually, not on purpose, but segues me into what I actually do. And what that came about was, it's more like people say, oh, you're like Hitch. And that is a bit of a simplification, and there are certain faults I have with that movie, but it is kind of like that. The point is, be yourself, love yourself, learn how to be confident, or at least not care about other people's opinions of you, and then, be authentic, be direct, say exactly what's on your mind, and the things that you're interested in right off the bat.
Of course, and then everything else falls into place. If you're just honest, 100% honest all around, I don't think you could really go wrong in any situation.
Exactly. There's a book that I recommend called Mode 1, and I think everyone should go out and read Mode 1. It's by Alan Roger Curry. He's this smooth black dude who broadcasts out of Chicago and one of the nicest guys you can meet. And he makes the point in that book that when you manipulate people, you leave yourself open to manipulation. And when a man meets a woman and tries to be on his best behavior and hide all the flaws about himself and hide all his passions or preferences that are going to come out later and possibly make you incompatible with the person you're sitting in front of, when you go about hiding all that stuff just to get laid, you're manipulating that person. And that person, in turn, can manipulate you. And the two major ways that women manipulate men are, for either attention, they want validation, so they keep you in their pocket, they string you along, or for money, and they do the gold digger thing.
Right.
So when you're out there and hiding yourself, you open yourself up to both of those things.
So back to the openers, what would you coach somebody on, or what did you learn in that book, in that flight to Vegas? What are, just on a high level, obviously, every situation is a little different, but what would you say, you learned, or what did you practice that particular trip, and what do you preach at this point?
Okay, so yeah, I get off the plane, I read Mystery Method, I find a book of openers and stuff, and now everybody who gets into pickup has this sort of phase. So we all look back and laugh on it. It's embarrassing now.
I'm sure.
There are still guys running around doing this. They either just got into it or they haven't evolved yet. But they were called canned openers, which means somebody else had already thought of them, tried them out on, hundreds of people perhaps, or at least a handful, and thought that it worked,
Right.
and then wrote it down somewhere to share with other people. So one of them would be, you walk up to a group of people and say, hey, did you guys just see the fight outside? Right? And they're like, oh, no, what happened? And then, boom, now you're in a conversation.
Right.
There are also, there are scripts that go 3, 5, 8 volleys deep. You go up to a girl and you're like, hey, guys, quick question. Who do you think lies more, men or women? Oh, and then, boom, you have this, you have this, you have this. And then next thing you know, you're using that to trick them into a real conversation with you.
Right. So that was sort of the first step, and now obviously you've evolved from that, and that's just sort of get you confident,
get your foot in the door,
give you
kind of thing.
the material you need to start the conversation to get the confidence to get to the next level. Is that right?
Right, exactly. But what it really boils down to is protecting your ego. You go up to people and you say, you know what, if she doesn't like me, it's not because she doesn't like me. If she rejected me, it's because I said the thing wrong. I need to hold myself better. I need to look over my right shoulder a little sooner. I need to,
Right.
enunciate these words or use a different opener. When the reality of the situation is, you know what, maybe she just didn't like you, dude. Fucking suck it up and move on.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah. So now, so where does it evolve to from there? Once you graduate from that level, where does the game, or where does the approach, I guess, go from there?
Well, now my entire way of meeting somebody on the street would just be to walk up to them and say, hi, whatever compliment is in my head initially, usually it's, I think you're cute. something very simple like that.
Right.
But it could be adorable. It could even be, I think you have an amazing ass. If that's really the first thing that came to your head, then you should be saying it. Because if you're the type of person who thinks that, you need to be with the type of person who appreciates that.
That's 100%.
Right?
That's a good point.
Yeah, and if you walk up to a girl and you say, hey, I think you have a great ass, and she's like, oh my God, that's so horrendously inappropriate. Well, guess what? Even if you went up to her and were like super polite, eventually you guys aren't going to get along. Because if you're the type of guy that can let that come out of your mouth.
Do you have any interesting stories of you having approaches like that and situations that have followed?
You know what? I've only had one really bad blowout. And that wasn't even the girl's doing. Do you guys want to hear about this? It's actually it's a little funny.
Yeah, let's go for it. Why not?
I would love to hear it.
Got this close, you know?
All right, so while I don't believe in canned openers and all that kind of, manipulatory stuff, that's not a word, but whatever, I do think that certain parts of this have their purposes if you use them in a more specific way. So if you, for example, are the type of guy that's like really, really shy, really nerdy, or just doesn't have doesn't know what to say when they first go up to women, then sure, use a canned opener to get on your feet, right? Use it to prove to yourself that people actually enjoy being talked to. And that's the real lesson that I took from it.
Right.
Because I was approaching everybody. I was approaching men, women, just trying to start conversation.
Yeah.
Because growing up in New York and Boston, the crowds can be really abrasive sometimes. So I always thought, you know what, that guy looked interesting. I'd love to go up and see where he got that shirt or whatever, but I'm afraid he's going to turn around and call me a fag. And that kept me really sort of shut down. So I never approached people for almost the entirety of my 20s. Then when I got off the plane in Vegas and started doing that stuff, I was like, wow, when I'm sitting in the club going, I wish people would talk to me, turns out other people are feeling that same way. So I can just be that guy, right? So you go from there, and that gives you some confidence once you start learning that, and you start realizing, hey, I can approach people anywhere. I can approach them on the train, I can approach them at work, whatever. So I'm at Logan Airport, and I'm sitting waiting for this flight that's been twice delayed already. I ended up calling in and getting a refund when they said I wasn't going to be able to, and then shared that news with everyone else, and they got refunds. So I came out looking like the hero at the end of all this.
Nice.
But before that happened, there was a cute girl, and I thought she was staring at me. And there's a good reason. I was looking pretty damn good that day. So I walked by, thought she's staring at me, and then she gets up, leaves the group of people she's sitting with. They look like they could have been her parents, and walks in, then walks directly past me and sits by herself. So I'm like, okay,
seems like a sign.
An invitation. Maybe not. I don't know. But you investigate, right? I haven't approached somebody in an airport before. That means I should approach them there, right? So I just wanted to sit down, kill some time while the flight was delayed, just chat her up a little bit. Before my ass even hit the seat next to her, she looked in my direction, terrified eyes, got up, and skittered right back to where she was sitting. I didn't even get to say hi, right?
So false signal.
Right? But that's not the bad part. All right, I've had people. At least she looked in my direction and had a reaction. Right, the worst is when people just ignore you like you don't even exist.
Oh, that's a fun one.
I hate. That's just awful. But so what happens? I'm like, oh, okay. Well, so I get up, I start walking back towards my seat, and I don't go 3 steps before this tall, had to be 16 or something. Or I don't know. He was a teenager. This tall teenager gets in my face and goes, if you talk to her again, I'm going to break your fucking skull. I'm like, what? And this guy is in my face. And I go, what? I can't even believe he's talking to me. I'm going to break your fucking skull if you talk to her again.
Oh, my God.
And I look at him, and I go, you're going to fight me in an airport?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And at that point, he sort of realized what was going on and sort of went back to his seat. So then I took a seat opposite him and just stared at him until we got on until they canceled the flight. But that was the worst of it.
That would have been great if you sat next to him on that flight.
Yeah, you guys you're in between the two of them.
You got the middle seat on that one?
Yeah. It was kind of, I just felt bad for him because I thought originally that maybe that's her brother, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe he's just pissed off at people always hitting on his hot sister, right? But then I saw them making out, and I was like, oh, he's just an insanely insecure douchebag. okay, and then I felt sorry for him.
Yeah.
So how old was this girl if he was 16 or 17?
She probably was too, but you can't tell. I mean,
Yeah.
like a lot, I can't tell.
Oh,
You
it
know,
gets tougher by the age. Well, and that's the risk of being, to approaching that many people. You just don't know who's with who, and there's so many insecure people that would take even a casual conversation as threatening to them, and that's certainly
exactly.
the risk.
Exactly. But I did. But you know what? After saying that story, I want to emphasize that of the probably hundreds of people that I've spoken to over the last 3 years,
A small
that was
fraction,
the
really.
only reaction
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
That's a big fear that men have. Like, oh, I'm going to go up to this girl and her boyfriend's going to kick my ass. That doesn't happen. It really, like, sometimes it does, but it's going to be kind of obvious. Like, look at the scowl on his face. And there's also ways to get out of it and stuff. It's really a minor concern. The fact that the girl is going to slap you, throw a drink in your face, call you a name, be mean in general, or any of those things are really, really minor concerns as long as you're not a total asshole.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure you ease your way into the bath anyway. I mean, that's not like you sit next to her and say you want to have sex tonight. I mean, maybe you do, but I mean, nine
Although
out of
that does, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure you would know the situation where maybe that was appropriate, but you're in an airport, so maybe it starts off a little easier in conversation, a little lighter, and then it would evolve on naturally based on her response, I would think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and well, you said you ease into it these days. So that actually makes me think of what I do now. So when I do teach people now, the way that the program goes, and I work for a guy named Sasha Day Game, and Day Game is a style of pickup. There's night game, day game. Honestly, it's all pretty much the same, but that was his forte.
Right.
So his name is Sasha Day Game. You can find him at sashadaygame.com or sashapua.com. He's rebranding because he realizes as well that this pickup thing, it's dwindling. People aren't really getting involved in this as much anymore. But a lot of these social freedom, that's what we call it, social freedom skills, apply to everybody. So he's rebranding his company to be more of like a service for people that want to be more just socially
Just put themselves out there
smooth,
more.
socially calibrated. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So the way that we run a boot camp, and we still do boot camps, is it's 2 days, Saturday, Sunday. Saturday focuses mostly on the social freedom stuff, getting yourself comfortable in situations and comfortable approaching people and talking to people, and then Sunday focuses on like the dating advice stuff. But really, it's trial by fire, and that's my preference. And a lot of people, they don't prefer that. They like to do things little by little. And there are plenty of services out there that'll say something like, today, just wave at 3 people. Tomorrow, wave at 5. Next week, actually say hi to people. And you can slowly build yourself up.
Right.
I've never been a fan of that because it doesn't really, it's too slow for me.
You want to jump right
For
in.
people that, exactly. And you can, as long as you have the balls to make yourself do it, as long as you can force yourself to do it, then honestly, a weekend really is all you need just to get started. And what we do is we actually just take you out into the street and embarrass the shit out of you.
So you get that fear out of you right away.
Yeah, we create scenarios, goofy, funny, basically pranks, wind-ups for people, and we make you go do them. And the best ones all have a use for actually talking to people or dating or something like that.
Right.
Like one of them is, men go, what if I can't think of anything? What if I can't think of something to say? Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go up to that girl, and I want you to say hi, and then stare at her and say nothing else. Don't make facial expressions. Just say hi and just stare at her in the eye.
Just a blank slate.
You would not believe how long the girls will stay there. They will give you every chance. They will be like, is there something you want to say? Is there something, I'm sorry, are you all right? They will just stand there talking. The longest I think I saw was about a minute, a solid minute.
That's a long
Wow.
time.
Wow.
Yeah, I think we videotaped that one too.
So what's the value of this lesson here? What do you get out of it?
You get out of
That'll
it
give you a
that,
chance, I
hey,
guess.
so what if you don't know what to say? She's going to give you the time. She's still going to give you the chance.
Wow.
Don't be afraid of that. Another one is, and we actually do some of these on men too, right? So this one is a lot of guys they're not calibrated enough to know how close to stand to someone, right? They err on the side of caution and stand really far away. And when you stand too far from someone, you're just disengaged. No matter how long the conversation is going, you're not building anything. There's no momentum, right?
Right.
So the appropriate distance to stand from somebody is actually if you take your elbow and like put it on your belly button with your hand extended, it's about a foot and a half. That's how far you should stand from someone when you're first talking to them, right?
Okay.
Maybe give or take 6 inches. Think about you guys standing, like if you guys stood up right now and had a comfortable conversation, you'd be that far away from each other. So to get people comfortable with that, we make them go sit uncomfortably close next to other men on park benches. And then when the guy moves, we make them follow him. But at the same time, never acknowledging what he's doing. Yeah. So like these aren't like genius ideas or anything like that. It's just what Sasha says. What his mantra is you can't teach confidence, right? Nobody says I went to a confidence seminar last weekend and now I'm king of the world, right?
Right.
It doesn't happen that way. Confidence is all of your experiences up to that point. But you can teach indifference. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to show people, look, nobody cares. Nobody cares what you do. Like, the world isn't watching you. All of these things that you're worried about, who's watching, who's saying this, who's saying, nobody is. Nobody cares.
No, definitely not.
How many people
and that usually gives people a starting point to then go off and build real confidence after that, because then they start actually getting achievements. I walked up to this girl, I got her phone number.
Yeah, that's a good foundation to really build some self-confidence and I guess lack of fear for what other people think about you, which goes back to your point where you don't want to care what people think about you. You just do you.
Exactly. I've dedicated the end of my 20s and the start of my 30s to rooting out any source of fear in my life, and that's taken me down a lot of interesting paths. And I'm not saying I'm fearless. I'm absolutely not fearless. But what I'm trying to say is I'm looking for limiting beliefs and tracing back their roots. And more often than not, it's due to some sort of fear. This is a topic for a whole different podcast, but I decided to become non-monogamous, and I realized that most of my monogamy was which I was very good at. I did it for like 13 and a half years, very strict monogamous.
Right.
And I didn't cheat or anything. It was, I that's what I preferred. But I realize now that a lot of that was based around fear, fear around fear of loss, fear of having somebody being taken away from me, fear of how I would feel or how I would look in that light and stuff. So
right. It's paralyzing.
Go ahead.
It's paralyzing is what I'm saying. It can be paralyzing.
Oh, yeah. So, and then I started going down that path. I realized, oh my God, there's actually, a fear issue that's been dictating my choice of careers and my, the way that I run my life and stuff. And I traced it all back there. And to be fair, pickup led me down that path to figure those sort of things out. So
right.
When I turn around and say people shouldn't get into pickup anymore, it's only because I'm afraid that people won't be able to dodge the negative bullets that come at them when they go down that path. I feel like there are other ways that they could improve themselves and start rooting out fear without getting into negative mentalities like objectifying all of your relationships.
Well,
that's a common pickup mistake.
It was interesting. I don't know if you're a fan of Workaholics on Comedy Central at all, but they actually
love it. Saw the reference.
They actually referenced that pretty
Yeah.
recently, and they were referencing negs, and the girls they were talking to actually came out and said that that's so 10 years ago. We know what you're doing.
Yeah, and I was caught originally. Like, honestly, there are even responses to that. Like you go up to a girl, hey guys, quick question. That was the common beginning of like all of these canned openers.
Right.
Hey guys, quick question. And the girl turns around and she goes, I know what you're doing. You're doing that pickup artist thing. And then they're like, oh, then you know, oh yeah, see, I just started. I wanted to see if it would work. Isn't it funny? What do you think? And then boom, you're in conversation. So, it still worked out.
Right. Yeah, so it seems like there's a built-up awareness, obviously, at this point that people do have, these approaches, and I don't know if that makes them, a little more standoffish than they would normally be because maybe they see, maybe there's so many people doing it, they've seen this act a number of times where it just becomes that much less effective, and maybe, like, back to your point, it's actually creating this, it's almost creating more fear because these guys are trying these canned things that are so 10 years ago that they're getting rejected and can't get over these hurdles.
That's a good point.
if only that were the case. What's actually happened is that the scene has evolved, and the companies that still exist have evolved in some pretty negative ways. And I don't want to, there's things that I have gone on record online posting against, but they were all in private forums,
right.
So I don't really want to name names right now.
Sure.
But they're like, they've been around for a long time. They've been around since the game, and the manipulation that these guys have mastered is so perfect. I consider myself a pretty smart guy, decently read. I was a philosophy major, right? So
right.
I've read about a lot of that kind of stuff. These guys will now take religion, philosophy, Eastern beliefs, and bastardize them and craft such perfect pseudo advice that just really draws people in, just like a cult. The ones that exist today are like cults,
right?
And those like they really stepped the thing up. So what happened is there were phases, right? It started off, it's all about these openers, okay? It's all about opinion openers. Then people get wise to that, so they come up with a different thing and a different thing and a different thing.
Right.
So only the really new people start with just the opinion stuff. Quickly they move on to different things. Now they're teaching basically mentality. So instead of having an opener, you just want to come in and act a certain way. It's fake it till you make it.
Right.
But what ends up happening is
that where the negs come in?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
Like negging is basically the theory behind negging is a hot girl thinks she's so she's so awesome or whatever. She thinks that every guy's gonna like her. Or she's used to getting treated really well her whole life. So you come up, you treat her a little shitty, like maybe her brother or dad or some people who know her as a normal person,
right?
And that knocks her ego down a little bit closer, so that way she'd be more interested in a guy like you.
You're a challenge. You're a challenge. She wants. Everything's been handed to her. She wants something different.
But that brings up the question of like, what's wrong with you? Why are you even assuming? You're starting from an assumption that this girl is better than you somehow,
right?
Or that there even is,
right?
Yeah, or that there even is like a better or worse or whatever. There isn't. People talk about leagues and stuff like that. Leagues are not based around looks, and the people that really think they are in a very temporary world, right? Because looks change. Just because you're, and people it's ugly or whatever doesn't mean you can't get a hot girlfriend and vice versa. It's really dependent on that person and whether or not they give you the chance, or you guys give each other the chance to really get to know one another. Now, what is the absolute worst place to try to do that? A fucking nightclub.
Yeah,
That is the worst place in the world to try to do that. Everybody there is going out for validation. They all want something, right? They either want to get fucked up, or they want to just dance, or they want guys to hit on them, but they don't really have any intention of doing anything, or the guys all want to just get laid, right? Everybody just wants something. No one's looking to just be themselves or whatever. So picking up chicks in a club is playing the game on hard mode. But once you get good at that, dude, try going to a singles mixer, and it's like taking candy from a baby.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So you've already been trained on a very high level, and then you go to this this beginner, this novice, speed dating or what have you, and you just clean up.
But it's not even. Yeah. Well, what happens is I went into a Match.com mixer once, and all the guys just flood the bar so they can get drunk enough to have the courage to talk to girls.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas me and my buddies, we walk in and just immediately start talking to every girl that's there, and it's already an atmosphere it's called a warm atmosphere, right? Because everyone knows what they're there for. You have a shared interest.
Right.
So you can talk to one girl, get her number, talk to another girl, get
And you're
her
not
number.
going to
Everyone's
offend
there
anybody.
to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you walk into that sort of thing. And that, honestly, that's what I advise people. I'd say find warm environment. The best place to meet women is while you're doing something you enjoy. You know? And then you find that you have that shared interest, and it's so much easier to just start up a conversation.
Yeah, it's a valid point. So you were saying before Rusty cut you off, you're talking about sort of the cult environment that's been created now with a lot of the Eastern philosophy and things like that, and things like that. Just wanted you to wrap up on that part because it seemed like it was getting pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, so that leads me into talking about inner game. So really, everything I'm talking about now is something that people refer to as inner game. Outer game would be the way that you present yourself, the way that you carry yourself, the things, the actual openers that you use, your tonality, stuff like that. And a lot of that stuff is important. Basically, people are trying to give you the behaviors of a confident man. They're saying, carry yourself this way, lower your tone, blah, blah, blah. This is the way that you would act if you were just naturally confident, right? So those are good things to know, and they do help. And honestly, a lot of that stuff translates really, really well into business.
Right.
Dating and business are very closely related. But inner game is more the stuff that I'm talking about. So what I try to do is try to use outward challenges, exercises, or whatever that have an inner message, right? And the inner game stuff is basically saying, okay, you got to detach from the outcome. So that's a very Buddhist sort of thing. And it is true. You want to be able to approach, say 100 people rapid fire and have them all reject you and not go home feeling like a piece of shit, right?
Okay.
That takes some practice. It takes forcing yourself out the door. Like, my ego has had its face kicked in so many times that, so many times where it's like, oh, that stung. Oh, wow, she really doesn't like me. Things like that. Or, hey, I had a really great time with that girl. It seemed like we really hit it off, and then boom, she flakes. She just disappears. There's no explanation. This shit happens all the time. I'm sure you guys have had those scenarios happen
Absolutely.
to you before, right?
Oh yeah, I think that's just part of life.
Yeah, and each time it's terrible, right? So it makes you not want to do it again. But what you have to do is get back on the bike and do it again. Do it again over and over and over again until it doesn't hurt anymore. And at that point, some really magical stuff starts to happen. Like, you really start to come into yourself, to just sort of command rooms, to command situations, like, because you don't care anymore. You don't care who likes you or who doesn't. So people say, yeah, detach from the outcome. Let go of those expectations. Go up to people out of curiosity instead of horniness and things like that. So the companies that I was talking about before, they'll take those messages and they'll use them, and they'll say stuff. They'll say what I say. They'll say, hey, you guys don't even need us. You can do this all on your own and blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, they're putting out so much material, so many videos, so much of this message.
Right.
That that people are just eating it up, and they keep clicking on it and whatever. And subtly hidden in all of those messages is, quote unquote, so you can fuck the girl, right? Let go of the outcome so you can fuck another girl. Be confident in yourself so you can get laid. No, we need to take all of those important messages and chop that last part off. Because when you don't chop that last part off, the way that your life is judged is around this outward reaction that women have to you. And when you're constantly seeking validation outside of yourself like that, you will always be miserable. Yeah. It'll be like the guy who's like rich already but needs to keep getting more and more money. Yeah. When these guys, they go from being needy, sort of weak, they refer to as beta in the community. I actually don't like that term, but it summarizes things pretty well. So these beta, needy, clingy guys, pretty much codependent personality types, they get into the negative mindsets of this stuff, and they become compensatory narcissists, right? So they learn the behaviors of an arrogant, narcissistic asshole, and they use that to cover up their truly weak ego. And sometimes they get really, really far down that path, and everything is about the number, the lay, the ability to pull in weird situations and strange places, and just validation seeking constantly.
Yeah, and then you're never really going to be satisfied, and everything just becomes a tally at that point anyway. So
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know a bunch of people that have, like, I don't know what do you guys consider a high lay count?
A high what?
High lay count?
Yeah,
I'd say 25 plus. I would say
okay,
that would be pretty high.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people with I personally know a lot of people with double or more of that number.
Yeah, I mean, it's all relative. But
that are miserable.
Yeah.
Right. So and I there are exceptions. I do know this one guy who's like approaching 200, and he's happier than pig and shit. But I really believe he's got some serious personality issues, like perhaps some undiagnosed sociopathy or sociopathy, however you say that word.
Right.
But a lot of the guys, one of my close friends from the Boston community was he was the best. He was the best of our like class, you could say, right? We all sort of joined the forum at the same time, and this guy could pull a new girl from the club or bar almost any night of the week. Like if we were there and women were there and they were attractive, he was going to go home with somebody, right? He was that good, and he was miserable. Just horribly miserable. He had 5 different girls on rotation, and they all ended up leaving him. And he would fall in love with these girls like super fast, and then they'd break up within weeks. And it's taking him he's on his 2nd year of deprogramming himself from that stuff, and just learning to be authentic. Huh. So now he like calls girls, he has them meet right outside his house. He's like, hey, I'm interested in this, that, and the other thing. And more often than not, they go home with him. And before, he was going out and spending hours just pushing through resistance, they call it LMR, last minute resistance, taking a girl home, getting her top off. She wouldn't go to bed. She wouldn't go all the way with them. So there's, all these different techniques you can try and whatever. And I always say, the more you're working for a girl, the less compatible you are. Accept the rejection and move on.
Right. It should happen much more naturally and organically
than forcing something.
I call him. I steal this. There's a guy called Aaron Sleazy. The sleazy part is supposed to be ironic. Yeah, and he's got a book called Minimal Game, which I really like. And in that book, he says there's 3 types of girls: red zone, gray zone, and green zone. Red zone girls aren't going to sleep with you no matter what you do. Doesn't matter who you are, how rich you are, how good looking. They're not interested. They're not going to sleep with you. Move on. Green zone girls are the opposite. You got a big margin of error there. You could walk up, and puke on the bar, and she'd still like you, or something to that effect, right?
I think Rusty knows that philosophy very well.
There you go. And then there's gray zone girls, and they're obviously in between. So a lot of the traditional pickup guys, they go after the gray zone girls because they think, oh, this is the challenge, I'm getting to blah, blah, blah.
I'm going to get to craft my skill.
That into you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there is, you should be approaching everybody, so you're going to run into all 3 types, and each type is going to do something for your ego, either deconstruct it or give you some real confidence. But I always say, why mess around with a gray zone girl when there's a green zone girl standing right next to her? Like, if you're at a club, how many people are there? Why are you wasting your time there? Cut and run. Go to the next person. When you walk up to a girl and her eyes light up just because you said hi to her, that's your girl.
So you were talking about the boot camps a little bit, and you said there was like the 2-day ones, and those are kind of more like your cold openers. Is that pretty much the extent of what you do as far as in a group setting, like a live boot camp like that, or are there follow-ups to that too?
I'll give you the rundown. So we don't do any cold openers or anything like that. We collect the guys together. We sit down. We give them about an hour or so of theory. Right? We talk. We tell them a lot of the stuff I'm saying now. A couple other different things like. For example, why would you not compliment a pretty woman? She obviously would like that. She put on makeup and picked out her clothes and spent an hour getting ready just to leave the house. If you stop her and say, "Hey, you look very nice today," do you think she's going to be offended by that? She wants to hear that.
Right.
Everybody likes to hear to be told that they're ever since I started dressing well, I only learned how to dress properly like a couple years ago, and ever since I dress well, people compliment me and it makes my day. I fucking love it, right? So we give them that kind of theory, and then we take them out on the street and we have them do these exercises. So there's there's run up and don't say anything, there's sit really close to a guy, there's asking where the STD clinic is. That's a fun one. Hey, how's it going? Can you tell me where the STD clinic is? It really burns when I pee. That's a great one. There's picking your nose. That was the one I had the hardest trouble with. So when I did this boot camp myself, I was loving it. I felt like Sasha was putting the 28-year-old Mike back in touch with the 18-year-old Mike. And it turns out the 18-year-old Mike had a lot of shit right that the 28-year-old forgot. So yeah, so doing all those things, I was loving, but then the one I had the toughest time with was you stop a person, you just start babbling like a random thing, like, do you know where the Hallmark store is? I need to find a card for my nephew or whatever. And while you're doing it, you're just digging for gold. You are just digging, for real. And then you're like wiping it on yourself, and until this girl gets horrified. Like, that's the point.
Did you get a good one?
Some people... no. You're not actually supposed to, pull your nose beforehand, so there's actually nothing there. But, yeah, and I have seen guys get numbers off this, actually,
really?
Which proves the whole green zone girl theory. But also, like, what was important to me about that exercise was not that it was so gross to other people. It was that it made me so uncomfortable, right? So that said to me, in the spirit of the boot camp, this is the one I need to do. This is the one that makes me the most uncomfortable. I need to do this one more often, right?
Right.
And some people have different, like there's at least one exercise that people freak out about, and it's actually not commonly that one. And those are the ones that were like, go and do it. Oh yeah, here's how it works. If you don't do it, now you can leave at any time. You can leave the boot camp at any time. If you leave on the first day, you get a full refund, right? But if you choose to stay and participate, if we tell you to do something and you don't do it, we punch you really hard in the arm.
Nice. So you bully them into it, which is, I'm sure it's probably for their best interest at the end.
Yes, it is.
How many people are you having to punch on an average day?
Not very many.
Okay,
Most people know what they're signed up for. It's a big cost.
How many people do you usually work with?
Yeah, what's the
coach to student ratio too?
Oh, at the company I work for, at Sasha's Day Games company, it is no more than 2 people per instructor.
Okay.
Okay,
we
great.
Do, and that's purposeful. And usually the boot camps that don't get much bigger than 6 or so people.
Okay.
So 6 people, 3 instructors. Sometimes they're really big. Like when he goes, Sasha's based in London, so when he goes around Europe, those things can get really big. But it's still on the boot camp when you're paying that full price. It is 1 instructor per 2 students, so that way you can focus on it. And honestly, for some of these things to work well, you need 2 people. You need like a spotter. Make sure that the person you're walking up on actually isn't. Like there was this one dude who was walking around Toronto acting as if he was talking on a Bluetooth headset. But it turned so we were going to go up to him and approach him for one of the pranks, and it turns out he was just crazy. So,
yeah, there's those people walking around too.
So you got to watch out for that, I guess.
Yeah.
A couple landmines out there.
Exactly.
So
But yeah, no, I think I've had to punch 1 person maybe.
Okay, so yeah, let's just back up just a little bit. What's the most common, or what kind of students do you have in these retreats or these training programs? Who's really drawn to, what's the demographic, the clientele that's likely to engage in a program like this?
You would be surprised. I have taught everybody from 18-year-old, and I haven't taught that many people. So this is just me helping out on a handful of camps, and this is the range, right? We've got shy 18-year-olds up to 50-year-old surgeons.
Interesting.
Right? We've got guys who've never had a girlfriend or never gotten laid to guys that have been divorced 3 times. So it's pretty much runs the gamut.
Runs the gamut, right?
Yeah, but there's two personality types, and this was originally said by Mark Manson, who you guys should check out his blog, markmanson.com. He started off as a pickup artist, went down that whole traditional path, had that whole come to Jesus moment where it's like, this is hollow. I should start working on myself more, and all those other crazy stuff. He's just a little younger than me, maybe by a couple months, and or about a year. But the stuff he says is just super, super insightful. And his book is called Models, and I recommend everybody read that one too. But he said there's generally two types, and they are the socially uncalibrated, right, and then the too nice, right. So socially uncalibrated guys, you've seen these guys everywhere. They're your generic IT guy, right? You get up, oh, I wanted to present move. Let me do it. Those kind of guys. Right.
That was so
SNL skit right there.
Yeah, that Jimmy Fallon SNL skit.
Exactly. So
Nick Burns.
A lot of those people piss everybody off, but they're not mean people. They're not. They just don't.
They just
don't
know better.
Socially calibrated.
Yeah, they haven't been.
Yeah,
exactly. They just don't know better. And the practice. And they just need the practice. Is really what it is.
Yeah. And those guys are actually pretty easy to teach because they don't know that they're supposed to be afraid of things. So when we tell them, hey, go talk to that girl in front of her mother, they're like, okay, and they just go and do it.
Right.
The only problem is they have to do things like sometimes literally hundreds of times before they figure out what the appropriate response is.
That's just how their brain works.
At the very least, they need years. And I actually I've had multiple close friends that were of this type, and one person in particular was like, he used to piss off everybody that was around. He was constantly getting into fights that IT didn't know I was saving him from, because this guy's like, I'm going to kill that guy. And I was like, oh, no, he doesn't mean it. But yeah, over the course of, say, from age 21 to 25, 6, he figured it out. And he became like pretty much a normal person. Then the other type is guys like me. We're too in tune. We're too in tune to other people, in that it makes us paranoid, makes us afraid, right? So we think like, oh, I'm going to go up to that girl and maybe that'll make her uncomfortable. I don't want to make her uncomfortable. Okay, I'm not going to do that then, right? All right, you're being a pussy. You're just plain and simple, you're being a pussy. You got to go up, you got to talk to him. So it takes a little bit of work for guys like me to force ourselves to get into it.
Right.
But then once we do, we quickly start picking up the rest of it. We make progress really fast. So and I feel like I made progress really fast. And the way that I define progress is not by how many numbers I get or how much I've been laid or all the cool, crazy scenarios I've been in, but by my personal overall happiness. I feel like when I got into pickup, there was a lack of knowledge. There was a void in my life around dating because I'd done long-term relationships since I was 13. So like 13 to 28, just long-term relationships. So I didn't know how to date. I didn't know how to get a number. But within probably, a year and a half or two, I think after about 2 years, I was done learning. I was done trying things. I had pretty much figured out my style and how I was going to do it the rest of my life. And now, at this point, you show me a video, oh, check out this new technique, this new theory. I'm like, I don't care. I've got what works for me. I know the general theories that I can pass on, and that's good enough. Whereas I've seen some people that have been in it 5 years, 8 years. There's this one dude, he was one of that first type that I described.
Right.
He focused so much on just opening, experimenting, opinion openers, direct openers, this kind, that kind, situational openers. He went and did literal hundreds of them over the course of a couple years. And after spending all that time, he finally got past that point. But it took him that long. And you know what? Everybody's got their own learning thing. And he was happy. He was happy that he made it that far. But in the meantime, it was a lot of effort. It's just, you know what the secret is really of all of it is getting out of your own way, accepting yourself for who you are, and relaxing.
Yeah, I completely
really those
agree.
Three things. Yeah. And it's super easy to say. It's very hard to do. The traditional pickup will have you believe that picking up women, or that I'm sorry, I'm forgetting how it's said. They're basically saying that the doing of the things is easy, but learning the skills is hard, right? Learning what you actually have to do is hard, because it's like, do this, then this, then this, follow A, B, C, and then that's the path to getting laid. And you have to learn that and memorize that and keep that in your mind and blah, blah, blah. And if you do that, then the rest of it's easy. It's actually the reverse. The actual steps to meeting a person, making a new friend, meeting a woman, getting a date, they're incredibly simple. They are approach and escalate. That's it. Approach, escalate, seal the deal, right?
Right.
Doing those three things is what's really hard. And that's because there's a lot of fear just standing in your way. You know, you get to the point, you get over your approach anxiety, so now I can go up to any woman and say hi. Okay, the next step is, can you touch her? Do you know what's appropriate to do in what situations, and then how fast you can escalate that physical scenario into, you know, where it is that you want to go with it.
Right.
So, so like at a club, I walk up to someone, I say hi. If they respond positively, my arm goes around them immediately. Now, try to get me to do that just a couple years ago, and I would be like, that's assault. That's assault. You know? Or that's harassment. It's not harassment. Harassment is if you keep doing it when she says no.
Right.
So guys, listen for no, and but also there. No, yeah, this is a touchy subject.
This is lawyer Micah coming out.
Yeah, exactly. This is liability, Micah. All right.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's the other thing about no. There's soft no's and there's hard no's, and if you listen to every single no that you hear, then you're going to be passing up a lot of opportunities when people actually did want you to say, here's the no, here's the true no. If she tries to physically leave your presence, like this means recoiling from you. Like if you walk up to her and before you even say anything, she recoils, she does what that girl did in Logan, don't follow her. Don't try to talk to her again.
Right.
Or if you put your arm around her, you touch her side, like you should obviously start slow, touch her shoulder. If she pulls away from you, just walk away. Just walk away, dude. You know, and if she looks at you in the eyes and says no, then you walk away, right? But if she's like, shut up, stop it, no, that's a little bit different. And honestly, if you're confused, ask the question. I'm all about being direct. Any thought that's on your mind,
whatever it is,
look for the
title of his next book, When No Means Yes.
No.
No might mean yes.
Yeah.
It might. I don't. Depends how it's said.
Yeah, it's so scary to talk about a lot. I'm still scared to talk about a lot of this stuff because taken out of context, or if you don't know who I am as a person,
well, it's all situational
really
based too. Yeah, you got to read between the lines. You got to read a lot of body language or inflections in voice, and clearly there's different scenarios.
This is the Cliff Notes too. What's a much more detailed process, and a lot is case by case.
Yeah, it really is, and you would just have to. That's why I tell people they should learn how to cold open, because then you get that experience approaching all those people. You get all those use cases. You get a big data set, and it lets you, draw some conclusions that you can go off next time. And no, they're not always going to be right, and there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. But you do your best, and you try, and you don't worry about it, and then you really learn to actually let go of the outcome. I don't see the rejections anymore. The only things that get me down is if there was a person that I wanted to approach and I didn't approach her for whatever reason. But that I remember those. I never forget those. But the ones that reject me or blow me off or whatever, I don't remember them about 5 seconds after it happened.
Mm-hmm. Right. So for your
actually, I've even approached the same girl a bunch of times.
Oh yeah.
I forgot.
Oh, you forgot you already talked to her? Nice.
How often is that?
Yeah, I forgot she rejected me and I came back.
Is that on the same night? Is that on the same night or at different points in time?
Both. The one time I was in Chicago and I approached someone a couple times. Then I think I might have even approached her a third time. It was dark. It was a dark club, and she looked at me and was just like, "Really?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I did this before. Bye."
You've already done this. We've already done this. This is not Groundhog's Day, pal. Just
that's strike three.
Move along.
So, and then one girl. See, and that's the other thing. This is why I tell people, rejection isn't really rejection. when you walk up to a girl in a bar and she doesn't know you, like, that's not really rejection. She's just like, okay, I'm done talking to you, or I'm not interested in. It's lack of interest, really. It's not going, hey, Rusty, I know you as a person. I know your wants and desires and dreams, and fuck you.
Exactly.
That's not what's happening. A breakup, that's real rejection, right?
Yeah.
Because she's gotten time to know you, right? But at the club, it's not really rejection. So I tell you guys, you don't know what's going to happen, even on a night by night basis. There's this one girl. She's a good friend of mine now. I approached her on a Saturday in New Paltz, college town. You guys have been there, right?
Oh yeah.
And I approached her on a Saturday. I tried to dance with her a couple different times, and eventually she's just like, "No, I don't dance with guys." Blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, so she blows me out 3 different times. Then
Do you
I go
have
back
sex
to
with
that
guys?
same bar. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So
I just asked the wrong
I-
question. Sorry. I should have been a little more direct.
Yeah. So then I see her on 2 days later at the same place, and I go up to her, and she's like, "Oh, hey, you're cute. What's your name?" I'm like, "Seriously? You rejected me 3 times not 2 nights ago." And she was like, "Oh, I'm sorry about that." And then we went out on an instant date. So,
All right. So it
So
actually
you
all
never
worked
know.
out.
So you pulled a Groundhog Day, basically.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Yeah.
Hey,
There's
what
a
was your
theory
name
of the
again?
Groundhog
Okay, I'm
Day
gonna
date.
remember that.
So it worked out in the end. That's good. So when you
But that taught me the lesson. It really did. That drove home the lesson of, what happens in that particular moment is what happens in that particular moment. Unless
Right.
somebody like really got a chance to know you and then tells you why they don't want to fucking speak to you,
yeah.
chances are they're just not,
It's
just wasn't that
situational.
night.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, do you find that some of these things work better with like 6s and 7s, 8s and 9s? In terms of a 1 to 10 scale here. What caliber seem to respond better to these approaches, or just any of these? Or do you even coach when you do these coaching weekends? Do you target towards certain calibers?
Demographics.
Yeah.
So yes and no. And the yes is obviously we all have our own scales. We all have, our, like my,
Beauty is in
your
the eye of the
6
beholder.
might be my 8, all that kind of shit, but it's all relative to each individual. But the theories that I live off of don't require any sort of look into physical appearance at all. I say throw out the 10 scale. Don't even entertain rating on that. Like,
Right.
if you can avoid it.
Right.
Then and so it's not like all of that stuff is relative, right? Like I might go up to a chick in a club who's all dolled up, looking like a total 10, and that same girl during the day, just hours earlier, is going to be in sweatpants on her way to the gym, with her hair pulled back in a ponytail and no makeup, and look completely unnoticeable, perhaps.
Right. That makes sense.
I tell people throw that stuff off. What I say is just approach anyone and everyone, and see where it goes. Like I said, some really hot girls love fat guys.
Right.
Like some really skinny guys love fat chicks. There is no accounting for taste. That's something I've clearly figured out, through experiential. Yeah, there is no accounting for taste. And I've seen some of the most successful relationships in some of the most physically mismatched people. I've seen, a lot of times, and when my friends are getting married, the guys that married chicks that I thought I've seen them sleep with more attractive, objectively more attractive women. Like when I see them sleep with somebody or get in a long-term relationship with somebody that's more plain, not ugly, not by any standard, but just a little bit, not the glamorous club girl, I'm like, oh, that they're getting married. Like there's something special about that girl. Something about their chemistry or something about their personality or something. They're together for that reason, because he used to be just only fucking hot, like stuck-up hotties, and now he's with this quite more normal, but a little bit more plain person.
Right. So it says to you that maybe it's a little more real than what some of the previous relationships were.
Exactly. And I also want people to know, just because you are, if you are unhappy with yourself, then you should change. Like, if you don't like the way you look, if you don't like your weight, then you should do something about it. Learn how to dress. That's awesome. You should do that for a couple reasons. And one of our mutual friends, Rod and Rusty, are one of our West Coast buddies that you guys knew from school.
Of course.
He was trying to tell me that. What did you say?
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
We know exactly where this is going. Go ahead.
He was trying to tell me years ago. He was trying to tell me back in like 2001, dude, you gotta look nice. Everybody treats you better. Yeah, and I was one of those guys like, no, man, I want people to like me for me and not my clothes. So I'll wear a band T-shirt that says "fuck you" on it and try to make friends that way. So, yeah, that's wrong. Don't do that.
So it attracted the wrong kind, is what you're saying.
No, actually, it's not wrong. Like, that was me. And the friends that I did make during that time are some of my closest friends. Basically, what I was doing was hyper-screening. I was basically screening out everybody except the people that would look at that shirt and be like, awesome shirt, bro. And generally, those are the people that I wanted to be around, right?
It's a little more of a niche, a niche target.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, you want to get laid all the time, find your niche and just live.
And
like,
just
if you're
it.
like a weird, a weirdo that has their own kind of, club or whatever, just go to that club and bang all those girls.
That's it.
Yeah. But yeah, so if you got something you don't like, then change it. Get in the gym. There are, diet. There are ways to do all this stuff. But if you truly love yourself and you like yourself exactly the way that you are, that's going to radiate, and that's going to be a confidence that's attractive. And I've seen plenty of big guys, ugly guys, everybody except awkward, shy, weird people. And even then, they get girlfriends because the girls chased them. And when I look back at my life, all of my girlfriends liked me enough to chase me, right? And then I was like, oh, I guess she likes me. Then I'll be her boyfriend. Like, I feel safe now to make a move and be her boyfriend. But that's a long process, and a lot of that is a shot in the dark. Like, you really want to take control of your own life. And you see something, you want to go after it, because otherwise, how do you know?
That's a valid point.
Yeah. So on the looks thing, like, no, it works. The stuff that I teach works on everybody. Looks are not a factor for it.
It just works on whoever you're compatible with.
Yeah. That being said, we will only push the guys towards chicks that one of us find attractive. Like, we ask them at the beginning and say, what's your type? What type of girl do you think is attractive? What type of girl especially gives you trouble? Like, so I had this one guy, he's an Asian kid, super smart guy, and he said, I love tall blonde women, but they terrify me. He's like, that's my type. If I could date a tall blonde woman, I'd be super happy, but I am terrified. So guess who we make him approach the whole time?
Tall
right?
blondes.
Exactly. So that's where looks come into it when we're teaching and stuff like that. What is your sticking point? What makes you nervous or anxious or whatever? Because what we want to do is reprogram people to, when they feel that anxiety, when they feel that their heart, like, do that adrenaline dump and give them a little, speed up a little bit. That's the girl you should be talking to, because something in your body is saying, you really, really like that girl. You are green zone for that girl. So now you got to go up to her and find out if she's green zone for you.
Right. That's a valid point.
Yeah. In all of those scenarios where all those scenarios that I've ever experienced have gone well for me. There hasn't been a single time where I looked at a girl and was like, like skipped a beat, lost a breath, and I went up to her, and at the very least she didn't go, thank you so much for the compliment. I really appreciate you talking to me, which in itself is an ego boost. Okay.
Now, do you find a lot of these, a lot of the people in these programs, are they just looking for girls to hook up with? Are they ultimately looking for relationships? Is there more that go into wonder? It seems like it's a little geared more towards the hookup side, but am I wrong with that, or is there a lot of people that are just like, I just want to find the right person for me, and I just don't know how to do it?
Yeah, it's mostly the middle of the two. So we rarely get people coming in that go, I just want to fuck, and if they do, they, at least in my community, they get shit on like pretty. It's like, that's great. Like, if you just want to come in and have promiscuous sex with as many people as possible, that's fine. Just go about it in a non-douchey way.
Right.
You know, if you've decided, hey, I'm a non-monogamous person and I don't plan on ever settling down, and I want to just, I have a very high sex drive, and I've met people like that too, guys that they just need to get laid constantly, and they like novelty. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're in there and you're just like, oh, I just need pussy, I'm just gonna crush pussy, blah blah blah, all this fucking macho bullshit. Yeah, I'm just gonna smash tonight, bro. I can't wait to smash tonight. I hate that one. It's kind of funny actually, smash, but you know what my favorite
That's a funny
is?
word.
It's an old one. It's a throwback.
What's that?
It's from Uchiwali. It's Get Up in Day Rib. That's got to be one of my favorites.
Up in there, rib, nice.
Yeah. So those guys, they usually come in and they either wash out into another pickup community that's more that will get on board with that sort of mentality, and that's the companies I've been referencing to. Those forums, you got tons of misogyny and just awfulness.
How many communities are there, roughly?
There's a pickup community in general, and then every company has their own message boards and forums. And the cultish ones get really culty. Like if you went on those sites, some of those things would be horrifying, and just pits of that whole bro culture, just awful misogynistic behavior, and creating this us versus them dynamic and this power dynamic. All these guys talking about, oh my God, I read the worst article about Valentine's Day. What's the perfect gift on Valentine's Day? Nothing, because you don't want to give up any of your power. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
dude?
that's pretty stupid.
Yeah. And there's guys that believe this like it's gospel.
Right.
So those guys don't come into. Fortunately, there weren't a lot of them on the Boston forum. There was actually none of them on the Boston forum, none to that degree, and none in the Facebook group that I moderate, and none in the Sasha's forum. So when people come in talking like that, everybody kind of gets on. Hey man, you really shouldn't think of things like that. You're going to set yourself up for some trouble. And me, I've taken a personal online crusade. No, I'm not going out and actively promoting this stuff, but I'm just trying to nip slut shaming in the bud whenever I see it. So if somebody makes a post like, oh, I was talking to this slut, or oh, this girl, I found out that she was dating more than me, what a whore. I jump on that immediately, and I'm like, hey man, you're ruining it for everybody. You're making the girl feel awful. She's not going to want to sleep with the next guy. You're ruining it for him, and you're just promoting a lot of this negative cultural stereotypes that's based on a lot of false information and biased science.
Okay.
So I try to explain. I try to educate people around
That's
that.
Smart.
But the majority of the people that get into this are guys that kind of like me, where they say, you know what, I need to learn how to pick up women. I'm not happy with my dating life, my sex life, and I do want to find somebody to spend the rest of my life with. But along the way, I'm going to get as much play as I can. Right? Fair enough,
Right.
I think. So, and that's usually the type of people. So they come in and they want to work on themselves. Very often, guys start with pickup and then quickly get into fashion, exercise, diet, career changes, improving their jobs, going into entrepreneurship. It really can be an awesome catalyst for personal growth.
That's good.
If you do it the right way.
Yeah.
Right. That's good. I didn't, I never really thought about that side of it, but it certainly makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're willing to throw yourself out there, then you would be willing to try to improve in other facets of your life, and kind of goes hand in hand.
man.
Really.
It seems like you want to change more than just your personal relationships. You want to change yourself as a person and grow. So.
Exactly. And when you start doing that, a lot of stuff just starts to fall together. The reason I read the game in the first place was because I got a new job in a new field. I had been, the move IT guy for 8 years.
That's right.
Yeah, you were.
and I got a job in sales, and I was like, a friend of mine had told me years before in college when the book had just come out, said, you should really check out this book. And I said, why would I read that book? I have a girlfriend. He goes, yeah, but you don't understand. A lot of this stuff in here could be applied to business. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. So now fast forward a bunch of years, and I'm like, you know what? I'll give this book a try. I got the audio book. I'll download it and see what's up. Because I thought, if I can basically sell myself to a hot girl in a loud club, I can sell software.
And
right?
You, and you could sell yourself
Dodge a wrench.
in business.
You can dodge a ball. Yeah.
Yeah, dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. That's so true, though.
Do you think you ever
Um,
would have ever got the job you have now without starting with this? Without
no, no,
reading?
no. I got the job first,
Yeah.
and I was like, well, I don't know sales at all. So what's close? What can I start? What can I learn that's also interesting that might be related? And how to pick up women. That's pretty fucking interesting.
And just like any business, any sales, I mean, you're selling yourself. They're buying the person, the trust, I mean, they're buying the seller, and that
Yeah,
goes for personal relationships or business, and it's cool to see that that also applies across the board. That this program is enriching people more than just in picking up women at bars.
oh yeah, it really is. Sasha gets emails, and then he shares them with the newsletter. He gets emails from students all the time that are like, Sasha, after I took your boot camp, I marched into my boss's office and demanded a raise and got it. Or after I took your boot camp, I quit my job and started a new one. Lots of crazy stuff like that. Like glowing reviews about how their lives are changed, because it really it's a giant psychological hurdle that you overcome when you realize, like, oh, if I just say and do what is truly a representation of myself, I'm rewarded for this. And that runs really counter to what a lot of society is telling you your entire life, right? They're
Right.
saying, go with the pack. Don't shake. Don't rock the boat. Don't cause trouble. You know.
Well, I guess that's the
But
shift in generation here. I think that's where it's going, and that's a good thing. And technology certainly enables that. And I'd
yeah,
imagine sites like Tinder and Match are probably changing the game a little bit as well. Just given that there's much more accessibility and opportunity to connect with people instantly within
Within
seconds.
seconds of
yeah,
being at a
they are.
place.
You know who the easiest people for me to teach these days are young kids, are like 18-year-olds and college kids. Because it is a very different thing now that we have these technologies like Tinder and stuff like that. The concept of this hookup culture has really sort of become acceptable, and it's really just. I believe that back in like the 50s and 60s, when our grandparents were walking up to someone and just being like, "You got the most beautiful lips in the bar. Let's get a drink." Like that's really like a guy's line that from like the 50s, and that's just being very direct. It's basically saying, "Hi, I'm talking to you because I'm attracted to you. I want to get a drink with you, have a date with you, and obviously you can assume where that might lead." That's what you're saying when you're being direct,
And that
right?
is that
And
what's happening through technology now? Would you say with sites like
I
Tinder? I
think
mean,
I think it's forcing people to, because when you've got sites like Tinder and stuff, or OkCupid or whatever, we already know, right? You messaged me, I know you find me attractive. You at
right,
least find me attractive.
right.
So let's go from there. Now, where people screw up is if they go out on these dates and they start being fake, or they do mode 2 behavior, which is basically, I'm not going to tell her that I smoke weed because she might not like it. Well, that's really stupid, because
Yeah.
you're gonna smoke weed again,
Yeah.
Or I'm not gonna tell her that I'm a huge fan of Anthony Jeselnik because she's a reverend's daughter and might not appreciate that sense of humor. Yeah, that's you don't think that's gonna come out later?
Yeah, it's only for short-term gain. So,
Yeah. So be genuine, be authentic, and be vulnerable.
and
These
those
are the things, whether it's business or sale, whether it's business sales or any type of relationship. These are the things that people appreciate, right? And a lot of people get hung up on that last one. They're like, well, vulnerable. What do you mean vulnerable? How can I be vulnerable and not seem whiny or needy? And that's not really what it is. Like, being vulnerable is like, if I say to you guys, hey guys, I really appreciate you calling me to be a guest on your podcast. It actually means a ton to me, a lot to me, and thank you for that.
oh, you're welcome.
That's genuine. That's a genuine thought, but that's also me being vulnerable at the same time, because you could turn around and go, yeah, we didn't put much thought into it. We just thought whatever, and yeah, fuck you, but whatever, you came on. Like,
And that would be a
do
neg.
Yeah.
yeah, there you go. So I, being vulnerable is just opening yourself up to the real you. And when you do that, it resonates with people, and they're much more likely to trust you. They're much more likely to be more comfortable around you, to buy things from you, to sleep with you. All of these things that people like to do with each other.
All these things. No,
Buy stuff and sleep with each other.
yeah, those are valid points. Any final advice you want to give to to anyone who might listen to this?
Yeah, I mean, if any, like a lot of this stuff, and even Sasha himself said that you can do this stuff on your own. Like, you really don't need anybody else's help. You just need the balls and the motivation. If you are lacking in either, we are here to help you. And you can, go out on the internet and, like I said, Alan Roger Curry, Mark Manson, Sasha Daygame. There's so many others that are really just good guys, solid guys. Oh, Johnny Saporno, I love that guy. If you have some issues around sexuality, if you're still tying morality to sexuality, if you still have a problem judging people for what they do in bed or with who or whatever, listen to Johnny Saporno. He'll break you of that kind of stuff. He just makes it make so much sense, the healthier mentality of it. Just be genuine, be authentic, be vulnerable, learn to love yourself and accept yourself as a person, and then show yourself to as many people as possible.
That's it.
Yeah, without breaking any laws. So
no, that's great,
just
man.
don't whip your dick out.
Yeah, you might get arrested.
Actually, that's a good move once you've already got her back in the room. Just
whip it out. Yeah, and we're going to cover that. We're going to definitely have you back on because we have a lot to cover.
Yeah,
we want to talk about the next steps.
terminology,
We got polygamy, right? Is that the right term we're talking about?
Polyamorous.
Polyamorous, excuse me.
I just say non-monogamy. Non-monogamy is the broad term, and then under that you can have.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I don't want to give any. Yeah, I don't want to say anything with any negative connotation, but yeah, we're looking forward to having you back on. I really appreciate.
Yeah, great conversation. Thanks for all your input.
Thanks for coming on and giving some solid advice and opening our eyes to the world of dating coaches and this underground world of just learning about.
Definitely want to get into some more details later on. Too.
Yeah, we've got a lot more to cover.
Opens up another can of worms. Want to tackle.
Yeah, I didn't even give away any technique yet.
No, we haven't. We talked about just the.
Hour and 15 minutes of very high level conversation, which is great. Which is a good sign. That means we have a lot more content for this podcast, so we're excited about it.
Yeah, well, thank you guys. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate you having me.
Great, man. Thanks for coming on, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon. That is Micah. And the website again for the day game, Sasha Daygame?
Sasha Poo?
There's SashaDaygame.com or SashaPUA.com. Also check out Sex3.0.com. I should have a guest blog post on there talking about non-monogamy in the next couple weeks.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah, we'll be looking for that.
Speaking of Pua, I think Rusty's got to take a Pua over here. So
Pua.
On that note, we're out of here. Thanks so much, Mike. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot.
No problem, guys. Good night.
All right. Take care, bud. See ya.